What do you remember about that day itself?
I just remember it being such a beautiful day.
Matt Bocchi was just 9 years old on 9/11, the oldest of 4 brothers from outside Morristown in North Jersey.
He was the typical dad's dad.
His dad, John, worked on the 105th floor in Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. At 38, a managing director at the financial services firm Cantor Fitzgerald.
Your dad did manage to speak to your mother after the planes hit.
He called my mother twice. The first call was 2 minutes after the first plane hit, and he said, Michelle, a plane hit the building. And my dad liked to pull pranks on people, so she instinctively thought that he was joking, and that he did walk out and he was trying to pull a prank on her. And she said, John, this better not be some sick joke. And the line cut out, and they spent the next couple minutes calling each other back and forth, finally getting through to each other, and my dad ultimately said goodbye. You know, everyone talks about September 11th, and people don't really talk about September 12th. And that's the reality of the situation for me, is that life was never the same after 9/11.
In his very honest and raw new memoir entitled Sway, said to be the first book by a so-called child of 9/11.
Really, everything that I endured happened because of 9/11.
Matt shares his personal obsession that grew out of the events of that day.
I began looking at videos and pictures of people hanging out of the North Tower because I was convinced I'd be able to find him in one of those photos.
He says that obsession led to addiction to drugs and alcohol and a years-long fixation with how his father died.
I think that I'm presenting a lot of the struggles that a good amount of us did suffer.
Matt's story includes harrowing details of sexual abuse by someone he thought was an empathetic relative.
He was the only one who would talk to me about it anymore. And he told me eventually, inevitably really, your father did jump. And so that's when the sexual abuse started. And all the while, I was more concerned about the fact that my dad jumped, and now I'm going to find him in one of these photos. It took years, you know, later finding out the truth, which was he was in the staircase. They told my mother that his death was very quick. After finally hearing all that and knowing the truth, now I have that closure, and you know, I no longer look at that stuff anymore.
As he began seeking help with his sobriety, Matt managed to graduate from Villanova and began a career in finance, much like his dad, though now more focused on writing and speaking publicly about triumph over tragic loss.
I'm sure you have conversations with your dad, but what would you say to him now, the Matt of today, and what would you want him to know?
I would want him to know that I love him, you know, and that I'm at peace with his death. I know what he would say to me, and that would be, enjoy your life and live, remember me for the good, not the bad.
That is exactly what Matt is doing. And joining us now is NBC10's Jim Rosenfield. Good news tonight, too. Matt's now 5 years sober, Jim.
He sure is. He's doing well, Keith and Aaron, as is his mother, by the way, who's remarried and has also found renewed happiness as well.
So, Jim, what was the turning point for him?
Yeah, he told me he was facing legal action. He had failed a drug test, and he says at that point he felt a sign from his father telling him it was time to get help. And he picked up the phone right then and there, and he got into treatment.
Wow. Fascinating story.
What an incredible story. All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim Rosenfield live for us there in the newsroom. Thanks, Jim.